Hello, everyone. Welcome back to We've Been Watching with David Stevenson and Claire Woodward. I'm going to call this season three, Claire. How does that sound?
Season 3 in a fairly irregular season or series. I'm so British, I still call it a series. How terrible is that?
That's
Shocking.
shocking. That's shocking. We haven't lost our Britishness. We're still British, which everybody will be relieved to hear or not. I don't know anymore.
But literally, as we've just started to record this, we've heard the tragic news about Robbie Coltrane's death at only 72.
Yeah, that's very sad indeed. I mean, he had such a fantastic career and stretching right back, beginning with TV, didn't he, Claire?
Absolutely. I mean, I think he sort of starred. I think he's, the ultimate Scottish star, really, because he worked with John Byrne in the theatre, and John Byrne is just an amazing actor and playwright and fantastic bloke. And then he became, he did things like the comic strip. He did lots of comedy series for BBC Scotland, like Kick Up the 80s and the fabulously named Laugh. I nearly paid my licence fee. Um,
That'll come back.
That will be repeated. We'll see a few things. I can't remember which series he rather famously played a rather gruff Glasgow Orangeman in, complete with a big bowler hat. That was
I
rather
mean,
fabulous.
the thing about him was that he never took himself too seriously. Did you ever interview him? I interviewed him very briefly outside the Saatchi Gallery, and he was so lugubrious. I know he was the definition of lugubrious, but he was just so funny about stuff. I thought, a complete natural talent, wasn't he?
Absolutely, and I think, his intelligence was absolutely towering. He was a really clever guy, a bit like John Sessions, really. I think who was was obviously another Scotsman who died far too early, and I think that intelligence really came across in the pieces he did. I mean, Cracker was just a piece of dark brilliance, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think Fitz is people have tried to emulate that character. I mean, you can't emulate the performance, but to come up with that sort of character that works, and it's much more difficult than people think. I mean, you've got to, I think you're right. You've got to convey the intelligence of the actual character, and that's no easy job, really. I mean, people will be remembering that fondly, and I'm sure they'll be digging episodes out to watch if they can find. I mean, God, where would you find an episode of Cracker these days?
Is it on BritBox? I don't
It
know,
could
but if it's not, it probably soon will be, won't it?
Scott Box.
Scott Box, yeah, because it's interesting actually that streaming services are pretty good at picking up on things like this and then shoving the programs on, aren't they?
They are. I suppose most people are going to be just digging out Harry Potter, aren't they? Really, and looking at Rubius Hagrid. I mean, that was an amazing performance, really. I mean, he was sort of made for it, but that sort of almost reduces the impact that he had. I think probably the warmest character in the entire franchise.
Yes, he was very cuddly, wasn't he? And he had that just amazing, comforting voice as well, and that sort of big, looming, wonderful presence.
Yeah,
Um,
totally. And do you want to
and
hear
it,
my favorite? Do you want to hear my favorite line, Claire? I'll get that out of the way early.
yes, we do want to hear it, David.
Let's let's have a drum roll for that because we haven't done drum roll for a long time. There's a storm coming, Harry.
Oh dear, that could have been made for Liz Truss as well today, couldn't it? But yeah.
That sent a shiver down the spine of everybody listening, including those new people on Amazon Music. I hope you're enjoying the podcast.
Oh, Amazon Music. Are we on Amazon Music now? How fabulous. We're on
This is
Amazon
what's happened in the
Music.
interim. I've heard of this new company called Amazon, and they do Amazon Music. So we're on there as well for anybody on Spotify or elsewhere that wants to jump across platforms. We're non-discriminatory when it comes to platforms, aren't we?
This is fabulous. We're everywhere like a rash now. Yes,
Yes, very
yes.
good. And I've got some new transitions as well. So we'll try these out. This is number 5. This is quite nice, and we'll get on and talk about some TV. It's a little bit
Someone's
about Boulder crashing into Andor, isn't it? But anyway, we're going to start talking about we're going to start talking about Maxine, which is a real life drama that was on Channel 5 during the week. I think 3 episodes. Now, I have to say, it didn't take me long to really dislike this drama, and I have nothing against anybody who's in it or the production. But I just, again, I'm really irritated by the fact that it's even there.
Absolutely, and I think those Soa murders they've been picked to pieces by so many true crime shows that
Absolutely.
we know it inside out. And, are we being invited to feel I think we were being invited to feel sympathy for Maxine, weren't we? And
Yeah,
I
I
have
know.
absolutely none.
Yeah, and doesn't that make you feel awkward? And there's nothing worse, I think, as an audience than feeling manipulated by drama. I mean, we'd never give in to anybody that we were being manipulated, but I did feel that that was what was happening with this Maxine character. And I mean, she's probably more evil and Huntley than I don't want to even sort of speculate on that really, but that's what the drama's inviting you to do, and that can't be right.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I mean, in that first episode, you could see that, he was ringing her up and, being abusive and controlling. And so what, I thought, really. I mean, I understand why Channel 5 made it because, their crime dramas sorry, their crime documentaries are really popular. But
Yeah.
are we going to have, like, I don't know, well, look how popular Jeffrey Dahmer is on Netflix at the moment.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I realize these things get ratings, but I've had enough of them. I mean, the Dennis Nielsen one, which I think we discussed, or maybe we missed it, but the
No, I
Dennis
think we
Nielsen,
did. It was very good, wasn't it?
yeah, I mean, again, that was brilliantly done, and that's the problem with these, isn't it? I mean, I think the other thing is that performers, actors must love doing them because they're. I mean, you can't say these are gritty roles. They're so dramatic, aren't they? The roles.
Mm.
And it's a challenge to get the character right as well, and get a real life character, down pat.
But I mean, the thing is, with Nielsen, he was, and it was David Tennant as well. So you had that
Yeah,
interesting people are wanting to see what Tennant's like. But Maxine, it was kind of well, she wasn't the main figure in the story, was she? She was the pathetic little woman that did all the cleaning up for him.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, the
and
only character, go on.
what I just say, I just thought it was grubby.
Yeah, absolutely, great word for it. I mean, the only person that came out of the first episode, I couldn't bear to go on any further, was the journalist. I thought, this is a sort of hero journalist who picked up an inconsistency from Huntley when he started talking about the two victims, and he said, but he pointed out, "Oh, I didn't think you'd met them."
Mm, mm.
So he was the sort of hero of the piece. But I mean, really, do we? I mean, as much as I'd like to see a journalist in a positive role, it's not bloody worth it, is it?
No, and I mean, I just hated it when his daughter kept coming into his office, the journalist, and said, "Oh, let's have a big hug," because
Yeah, I mean,
obviously
all this
Tim's
stuff is
daughter's
just,
gone.
yeah, totally. That's all again manipulative, to make you see another father-daughter relationship. And I just, I mean, that's too much of a cliche. I mean, I was writing this week about it, and my conclusion was that Ofcom should rule that you can't make any ad revenue while the program's actually on the air. And I think that would slow them down a bit because I mean, really, these are just money-making exercises by the TV channels.
Absolutely, and again, this one was over 3 consecutive nights, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
it's not a story worth telling over 3 consecutive nights, is it? I just I just hated every minute of it. It was just so why are we remembering these people? Let's remember, and ironically, we didn't see much of the girls who were murdered or anything to do with the murder. Why can't we remember these poor young kids as opposed to the people who murdered them and who abetted their murderers?
Yeah, totally. All we're doing is we're memorializing serial killers, aren't we? That's what we're doing with all these programs. We're not doing anything about, the making the victims stand out in any sort of a way. I mean, of course, that was what they saw, obviously, as a virtue when they were making it. We're not going to one show the crime. We're not going to show the victims in any sort of a way. So that takes away some of the shocking element. And no, it doesn't really. That's just trying to be artistic for the sake of some brownie point, isn't it?
Mm, mm. And I mean, I would love to know what the families of the victims of these crimes, which are rehashed time and time again, feel about these, the terrible events that they were involved in. being shown over and over again. I mean, I guess some people find a comfort in it to remember their loved ones, but boy, oh boy, it must be very hard to move on.
Yeah, not in that way, they wouldn't find it comfort, surely. I mean, I suppose it's gonna be pointed out to you as well by everybody that's around you. I mean,
Mm,
in a small village and small area like that, it's inevitable, and people, I couldn't imagine the townsfolk would have actually watched it. But,
mm, mm.
whenever you question broadcasters about this thing, and they say, "Oh, we always went to the family, and they were absolutely fine about it." But, of course, the reality is that no family of a horrific crime can do anything about it. They're pretty powerless if someone wants to make a drama.
Yes, that's interesting. It's all public domain, and it's under the name of this is fiction. And I mean, obviously the Maxine thing really was fiction. We don't largely know what went on. Um, but yes, we don't want any more of this, please, broadcasters. We've kind of had enough.
No, no, exactly. So we'll give that I'll just give it 1 star, and you can actually give it even less if you
Well,
like.
I think we can't really give it any lower than one, but it was like I felt dirty after watching it, frankly.
And I think as far as actors are concerned, there's any actors listening on Amazon Music. Now, no, I'm not sponsored by them. Um, just don't do these dramas. Just turn them down. Why do you keep doing them? What's in it for you?
Well,
Apart from the obvious.
yeah, well, everybody needs a remuneration, but this is what was I was thinking about when I was watching the final 3 episode series of The Rise of the Nazis on BBC Two this week. I just wonder what people think when they get asked to play Adolf Hitler in a recreation. Do they enjoy it? Are they flattered? Do they
Well,
think,
they're
"Oh
the
no,
ultimate
not
serial.
again"?
That's the ultimate serial killer performance, isn't it?
Absolutely. Because it's interesting. I mean, I haven't noticed the same person playing the Führer in too many things. I suppose it's one thing you don't really want to get typecast as, isn't it? Hitler.
I mean, that looks a bit of quality, actually. Is it called? It's not Downfall, or was it the Downfall of Hitler? Or
I think it's just all called Rise of the Nazis, but this run is about the fall of the Nazis. And it's just really interesting because they have lots of different voices. It's not just the usual sort of history professor blokes, but there's lots of international historians, historians of colour. There's women historians on there who is clearly as obsessed about Nazi history as I am. And it's just beautifully presented, and yeah, the sort of recreation things are all done very well.
Well, I
And
think
I mean, I
it's slightly different, isn't it? In the respect, I suppose, that they have a thesis that they're wishing to tell us in the TV documentary,
mm,
hopefully.
yeah,
Um,
it's
whereas
it's
there is often with the TV dramas, unfortunately, you can't see why they're being made. But I must catch up with the Nazis.
yes, you must. And there was a good series on Channel 4 sorry, there was a good series on Channel 4 recently. It was called Hitler: The Lost Tapes. And it was going into it's very interesting about Hitler's photographer and how sorry, how Hitler's photographer created his image. It was tremendous, really good stuff. What I don't know about the Nazis now, David, you could write on the back of a postage stamp.
But we'll still keep you on Nazi watch. I think that's important.
Nazi Watch, yes, we should do one every week because they're so popular. Yes, we should definitely do that. Yeah, I'm up for that.
Good. That's worthy of a transition.
Nearly caught my
Right.
hand in the car door.
Let's move on to ITV. We're going slightly upmarket with, not that I'm trying to cause too much offence to Channel 5, but let's go to Karen Pirie, this was told over 3 weeks, interestingly, and not a crime drama, not a real story as far as I'm aware, but it was interesting because it was dealing with a cold case from 25 years ago in Scotland, and a Val McDermid character being portrayed for the first time, Karen Pirie, and someone called Karen as a detective was the last thing I ever expected to see on television, frankly.
Exactly. Well, I mean, she did say, didn't she, in the first episode, this is a bad time to be called Karen. which I thought was, very of the moment. But I mean, Val's work is really of the, it is of the moment, and it does feel really fresh because her books, I don't feel are overcome. I think Wire in the Blood was hers, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That was very good. The
And
Robson
that was
Green.
very good. But I just think she writes such vital characters, and there's always so much that goes into the forensics as well. And it was just so nice to see, a fresh faced young actress in a good, meaty, serious role, not just a piece of fluff. That's what I enjoyed most about it.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. I thought I'd found little to criticize. I think the first episode was a bit slow and I couldn't work it was a bit disjointed, but once they drove the story on, I thought it was high quality stuff. And particularly the last episode, I thought was very dramatic. I thought the last 20 minutes was some of the best telly I've watched this year, really. And I wasn't expecting it, but you're absolutely right about having a sort of fresh-faced younger woman pitted against the sort of brutal old killer. I mean, I thought that was
mm,
really chilling in the absolute sense of the word, and it made me think about it's probably quite close to real life detective work in a sense where you've got younger detectives often coming up against people that they have to face down and try and get the truth from.
mm, mm, mm.
If we could have had it over 3 consecutive nights, I think it may well have improved it, but I don't think it took anything away from the original idea, which to get an original idea for a detective drama now is quite something, isn't it? And it dumped the cliche of the older detective who is either a widower or is drunk or can't find his way across the road or some similar ailment, and is trying to work out a sort of complex serial killer investigation with about 17 victims.
Mm, mm. And I thought what I liked about it as well, it had echoes of Unforgotten as well, with those sort of, three young men who were questioned about the murder in the past or coming together in the present,
Yeah,
which I
absolutely.
liked.
We're big fans of Unforgotten. I mean,
Yeah, do we
is
know
it?
when it's coming back, David?
I don't, but it did make me think of that because that's such high. I mean, I think the storytelling's slightly better in Unforgotten,
Mm,
um,
mm.
because he's been around a bit longer in a way. But yes, I mean, I think sort of 4.5 stars for me, really.
Oh,
It just
yeah,
started
four,
a bit
four,
slowly.
four from me. I'm being a little less generous, but yeah, it was good. And I say it just felt fresh. So thumbs aloft.
Yeah, well done, ITV. We'll have some cheering, I think. Right, and then some.
Oh my God. I'd love to know where that came from. It sounds like the Chippendales audience.
I think that was some leftover canned cheering from the NTAs when Philip Schofield picked up his award.
Now I noticed on this morning they did a sort of celebratory reel for This Morning winning an NTA, craftily cutting out any booing and hissing and anything about the highly ridiculous Q-gate story.
Yeah, I mean, I really think they should have done some sort of recognition and apology for that because um, it's not a big story, but it was a bit of a cock up, wasn't it? Let's face it. If
Mm.
some sort of clever PR or something came up with the idea of saying, "Oh God, we can get you into the press area." I mean, we could have got into the press area, but chose not to do it. I didn't queue either, but I thought it was probably wrong to do it. Um, and if
Yes,
we couldn't have beckoned me
and
to
they
queue,
didn't actually report on it, did they? They weren't seen on screen reporting on
if that's what the level of reporting is these days, I might go and be a reporter again.
it. But I mean, what about the NTAs last night? I mean, I do think they should actually. There was booing, a bit of booing for Anton Deck winning again, but they are nominated, and the award is voted for by the public. So,
Yeah, I don't have an issue with them getting so many awards. I mean, I watched a trailer which was released lunchtime today about the next series of I'm a Celebrity, and even the trailer made me look forward to the show. I mean, it was brilliantly done, the trailer, really well acted. And there's, falling out of a helicopter and laughing and joking, and I just thought it was brilliantly done. So they're good.
yeah, they are the best, aren't they? It's like sort of Bradley Walsh as well, isn't it? Winning again for, Beat the Chasers, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should sort of grow to resent popular performers. I mean, that's getting ridiculous, isn't it?
Mm.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it is ridiculous.
we put them there. We're watching them. I mean, they are by definition popular because of the audience that they attract. Um,
Mm.
it's difficult to get away from that, really, isn't it? The other award I thought was really good was Anton Dubek.
Oh, I love Anton. He's so fabulous. I'm just amazed that no one signed him up for a sort of, an ITV travelogue or something like that because, he is such joyous company and he is very smart and witty and yeah, he's wonderful. And again, Martin Lewis last night as well, who I just think is a very good thing for the
Yeah,
country at the
totally.
moment.
He's brilliant on that show. I mean, he's got what is a regular slot, I think, on GMB. I think he's there Monday and Tuesdays. I might be wrong. I think that's what the days that he does. But his tips and his advice to people is absolutely brilliant. I mean, for God's sake, he should be in the cabinet. I don't think we've got a completely dysfunctional government and a cabinet at the moment. I mean, Martin Lewis could run it in his spare time. It'd take him 5 minutes to whip them into shape.
Absolutely. Well, after it's been your turn and my turn, David, maybe Martin can do it. But I just think it was a pretty genius move of ITV to put the Martin Lewis Money Show on prime time in the evening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who would have thought it? 'Cause that's normally the sort of thing that would be put in a daytime schedule. But no,
Yeah, I mean, I
it's
think you would think that's
public service.
the driest thing, and of course, it is a dry subject when people are trotting along nicely. They've got a job which pays them well. Like they can afford to heat their house. I mean, that's the sort of stability that we all crave at the moment, but we don't have that. I mean, this week I caught up as a sort of rough old segue. Caught up with another episode of the Boris Johnson drama, This England. I don't know whether you caught any of that, have you, Claire?
No, I haven't. No. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say, David.
Well, the drama, I really enjoyed the first episode. I thought the first episode was terrific because I love Kenneth Branagh and anything he does really, and his performance wasn't an imitation. It was, done from, the solar plexus, if you like. So it had some meaning to it of this sort of, you know, humanoid quota of Shakespeare sort of philandering and floundering around number 10 trying to get on with government, not particularly well, it has to be said. So I enjoyed that more than anything. I know a lot of people didn't, but I'm in episode 3 now, and it's become incredibly bleak and grim about COVID, as you would imagine. And it's sort of a documentary with a tiny bit of drama uh, tacked onto it. I'm not sure it's still working, so I'm getting increasingly disappointed with it. And I'm thinking, of course, I'm now nostalgic for Boris Johnson, something that I never thought was actually going to be possible.
Yeah, it's tragic, isn't it? Absolutely tragic. I'm sure maybe Liz Truss, the drama, will be along in a few weeks' time when she's out of office because it was a pretty quick turnaround for this England, wasn't it?
It was, and I think if Johnson would still have been in power, I think we would have viewed it differently, and I think that is a bit of a shame about it. I mean, it's such a shame that Sky didn't have any input to stop Liz Truss becoming prime minister. I think maybe maybe Lauren, is it Lauren Lyle who played Karen Pirie could be a good Liz Truss. God, who would want to play that?
Yeah, I mean, yes, exactly. I mean, I think the Daily Star have a thing online, which they've got a live webcam on a picture of Liz Truss and a picture of lettuce, and they're saying which will survive the longest, Liz Truss or the lettuce. So maybe the lettuce could play Liz Truss.
Um, for anyone, I don't know whether you caught it, for anyone wanting a glimpse of the royal family this week, I mean, goodness knows somebody's probably sort of craving that. They could have caught up with what was quite a decent documentary on raising the Mary Rose, probably the biggest salvage operation ever. But the whole documentary was about sort of minor scrapping between the Royal Engineers and the Mary Rose Trust, which they'd all captured on film, which I thought was brilliant. It had been lost somewhere, and Channel 4 unearthed it.
That's interesting because when the Mary Rose came up, it was part of a. If you're a kid at the time, I think it was featured quite a lot on Blue Peter, so a lot of people will remember that with fondness. But clearly, I think the world of arts, culture, and heritage can get quite vicious, really, underneath all those tweed jackets.
Well, they were determined. It got so heated, and I mean, you're basically having people, well-meaning people within the charity, trying to organise the crane at various points until the crane master refused to take any further instruction from him. I'm not surprised, really.
The crane master. Oh dear.
Hello, I'm the crane master of Togmore.
Yeah, does that come out of, I don't know, a Game of Thrones thing? I am the crane master or something.
I think this would be an episode where Togmore would sort of become sort of hideous animal and sort of start stalking the earth. Really, I look forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be new and exciting.
But in my search for television this week, and it did get a bit grim in the middle of the week, I found myself looking at an old Poirot and an even older Maigret. I mean, do you find yourself on Talking Pictures very often, Claire?
No, not as often as I used to find myself on that particular channel, no, but that's the Rupert, I was gonna say Rupert Everett. Rupert, what's his name that played
Rupert Davis.
Maigret? Rupert Davis. I mean, that is a classic, and that's like 50s.
Yeah, it was 52. I thought, my lord, how much further can I keep going back? I'm going to run out of TV altogether historically.
But how
But
does
I
it
thought,
stand up?
well, it sort of does. I mean, of course, it takes you a good 5 minutes to get used to black and white, doesn't it? Because you keep imagining, God, I wonder what color that is, and that's quite distracting for about 5 minutes for me.
Mm.
And particularly when he was sort of because he drinks a lot of wine, Maigret, and I thought, I wonder if he's having white or red, and the the pathetically interesting things that you look for in a TV show. But I thought otherwise it really stood out as something that is even though it's quite theatrical, it's still very well acted and well written. So it works, but you're sort of having to overcome a very grainy screen in the meantime.
Mhm. And I mean, who'd have thought that it would have been remade with Rowan Atkinson?
Yeah, I think that's where it does stand up because Rupert Davies is a little bit plumper and he's far more believable as a Frenchman. I think that a Frenchman of sort of senior years, let's say. And of
Mm.
course, the investigations are good. The mystery, that's the other key thing about these. I mean, because it's told in an hour, you can sort of compare it with things like, if you like, Death in Paradise, which is, I think it comes out quite favorably there. I mean,
Well,
it's not.
frankly, anything would. Oh, I've said it. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the biggest name celebrity in the visiting party to the island who's going to be the killer, which is normally the killer or the victim anyway.
Well, I
Um,
mean, vintage TV. There's a channel that's popped up on Freeview called That's TV, which has the most random selection of old programs, mainly from the 70s, that I've ever seen. You can still get Benny Hill and the Goodies, and a selection of programs about how celebrities died, stuff like that.
gosh,
And Harry Enfield. I mean, I don't know how they buy these programs in, but it really is the most bizarre channel. But
that's funny. I think I did a piece on one of because they've got Till Death Us Do Part, haven't they?
yes, that's right.
And I had a chat with the channel controller, Mr. Controller, and I mean he was sort of celebrating that it might be offensive in various points, and I thought that was quite hilarious. Really, I was thinking, can you go around calling your wife a silly moo? And he said, oh yes, we've made sure we've kept that in.
I wouldn't be offended if someone called me a silly old moo. I am. But it's interesting that that they still get you know there is a market for all these old things, and also particularly because it's on Freeview. Normally
Yeah, and
these
also I
things are
think,
hidden behind a paywall.
yeah, totally. And I think, cost of living, people are going to be thinking, which service can I know we've talked about this before, which service I'm going to use. And of course, I'm mentioning Amazon a lot, but I think it's one of the cheapest, is it not?
Mm. Well, I mean, I've noticed today that Netflix are going to do a 4.99 subscription, but you will get less programs for it. So, I don't know what your bargain basement Netflix subscription will include. Presumably, it'll be things that have been done to death, and you'll have to wait. I don't know, a year or two to get the new ones.
I mean, what we're looking at is a really, really fragmented TV market where you won't know how many people are watching anything. Although Netflix say they're now going to release some audience figures. I don't know whether that's. I mean, people. It's only people in the media that care about audience figures. Do people actually go, "God, I'm surprised more people didn't watch the Queen's funeral"? Aren't you?
Well, that's it, and because it doesn't rely on advertising, I mean, you know, the only thing that matters to them is their bottom line of profit and loss, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Um, I had a look at some pictures came in today of the new series of The Crown. I'm wondering if it's going to be boosted by the death of the Queen, or whether people will stay away from it thinking it's in some way offensive. It's hard to really call that sort of thing, isn't it?
Well, I think people will watch it regardless. I mean, I have to say, I kind of gave up because I find the sort of Princess Diana and Prince Charles storyline rather sad and not very interesting anymore. I mean, what really I really enjoyed about The Crown were, characters like Princess Margaret and Princess Anne, who were just really interesting. And we don't know, we don't talk much about them, but the Chuck and Die thing is just very, very sad.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a terrible story. I know it was interesting that Olivia Williams is playing um, Camilla Parker Bowles, now the Queen's consort, and she was saying she was looking for the humour in the role because of their terrible predicament. I was saying, God, I bet they're having a good old laugh over a double gin and tonic.
yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, laughing at Diana. I mean, yeah, yeah. It's again, I would say it's an upmarket version of a little bit grubby, although maybe not quite to the Maxine levels of grubbiness.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think people now take exception to the Crown because they they say it's not accurate, and yet in every single drama there is a compression of events, and there is no accurate. That's not the point of it to be accurate, and yet
Mm,
there's a real problem now of being able to separate what is real life and what is a TV drama. I mean, the TV dramas are sort of it's a version of reality, isn't it?
exactly. Maybe they'll make a TV drama of this podcast
Absolutely, because
eventually.
we're a version of something. We're a version of a podcast.
Who's gonna play you, David?
Oh God, well, pity Tom Cruise is too short. It would be straight in there with his sort of acting skills.
Yeah, leaping over sofas and everything.
Who would
I
you
don't
go
know.
for, Claire?
Dandy Nichols from Till Death Us Do Part, if she was still around. If she could play me as a silly old moo in a wraparound Finny.
Well, they'd probably call we could. What would we call it? We would call it silly old moose or something. Shall we finish with a quick word on my favourite reality show at the moment? I mean, I'm not watching that many. This is the only one I'm watching, to be frank. We'll
Go
have a
on.
transition. We'll have a transition just for the hell of it. Oh, that sounds like a boulder landing in the middle of the Australian outback, which is what I was watching in The Farmer Wants a Wife on E4 on Monday. You only get to see it once a week, which I think is probably about right, really. Um, well, it's all about quite simple farming folk, and they are simple farming folk who have got TV cameras trained on them, and it starts off with about at least 20 women throwing themselves at these four guys who can't believe their luck, really. I don't think they've seen female folk for about 2 decades.
And what are the women like? Are they sort of the antithesis of the outback lifestyle, shall we say?
Well, they are. You've got management consultants and nurses and people like this. I mean, they're mostly sort of metropolitan folk, and I'm thinking, well, you're not interested. One of the women was saying this guy who had a vineyard in Tasmania, who I don't class as a farmer, but anyway, he'd almost built this sort of wooden hut at the back of his house, and she's going, well, it doesn't look very suitable for children. I'm thinking, well, why? Because it doesn't have any windows. I mean, he hasn't even finished it.
That sounds fantastic. I mean, one of the great I mean, I just like to hear, the songs lyrics of Waltzing Matilda being changed.
The thing about this show is one of the places they went to is Cunnamulla, which I vaguely know. I've never been there, but it's 8 hours north of Brisbane, so that's as far away from anywhere as you can just about get.
Mm.
And no one in their right mind would go there. I mean, okay, someone who's close to animals might do, but I go, And on that note, lovely to be back, and, I won't mention Amazon next week. Next week, it's Spotify's turn.
Yes, exactly, or any other people who'd be prepared to take us on. So, until next time, David.
Absolutely. Great to catch up on all the latest telly, Claire.